Following that, there's a period of mountain formation, volcanoes, ice formations, and enclosed seas which begin to evaporate, leaving large deposits of salt. Deserts of red sand appear. The continent of Gondwana forms. There's ice in the southern hemisphere. So everywhere you see red on these maps, that is where land was existing at those times. As time passed, the rock was largely red sandstone, meaning it was a rather arid or dry climate. The vegetarian is scant, meaning there's very little of it, at least in the earlier part of this period. Eventually, the gymnosperms, especially the cycads, are the most distinctive plants. They're so abundant that 2 out of 3 plants are cycads. They're ball-shaped, and then branches and leaves reach out of the ground. Gymnosperms are the plants that do not flower. So it's kind of a mystery as to how they reproduce. At least it was at first, but maybe that's something you'd like to research into. So here we see, as we continue in our timeline, the beginning. We said earlier that there was the beginning of the reptiles that were vegetarians, also saltwater amphibians. They're also at the beginning here. Right now we have the reptilian ancestors of birds like the pterodactyls, some of the first flying reptiles without tails, and eventually, as we move on, modern birds. There's the oviparous mammals. So early on, there were mammals that would lay eggs. But as time went on, the first placental mammals began to exist. Now that means that those mammals would carry their babies with them until they were ready to be born and on their own. The coal barriers are also forming. And here we can see some of the saltwater reptiles, the pliosaur, some of the other insects, and of course the large dinosaurs. And we also see the start of the angiosperms, which are the plants with flowers. This period is characterized by extensive geographical changes. The sea invades the great areas of land. The cycads are at their fullest development. The period ends with widespread mountain building and eruptions, especially in the western part of the Americas. When we think of the western part of the Americas, you can think of the Sierra Nevada mountain range. You can also think of the Great Rocky Mountains as well, which is a mountain range that spans all the way from Alaska way down deep into Mexico and South America, or Central America. There's also development of mammals, marsupials, insectivorous animals, and rodents. There are ginkgo, fig, and magnolia trees. All of those types of trees still exist today. And at the very end, of course, we see modern fish begin to appear, whales and the first elephants in the forms of mammals, modern birds, some of the first frog fossils that have found. And this is all following an ice age right here. And then, of course, our very special appearance, man, which is about during the Pliocene era. And this is a period where the land is dominant in spite of the advance and retreat of the sea. The climate is sharp. Birds and mammals suddenly appear in force and take first place among the animals. The mammals are prodigious. So that is a little overview looking more closely at our timeline of life. It's really fascinating to look at all the pictures of all the different animals, the different terms on the timeline of life, and even at the top, the different ages, the Carboniferous, Permian, Triassic, Jurassic, and the larger categories like the age of the trilobites, the age of the fishes, etc. So I highly encourage you to look closer at this timeline of life, not just at the things that I first shared in my lesson of the coming of life. There's so much to see and find here that can inspire so much research and so much investigation. Have fun.